What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name's CJ for Out of Bounds DFS, and in today's video, we're going to give you a 12-pack of picks over on PrizePicks. Or if you don't play on PrizePicks, all of these NBA prop plays are also applicable to various sports betting sites, whether that be DraftKings Sportsbook, FanDuel, PointsBet, you name it. You can use what I'm going to talk about in this video on any of those sites. So definitely stick around if that's something you're into. If this is your first time here, well, welcome to Out of Bounds DFS. On this channel, we talk mostly NBA and PrizePicks at the moment, but we do dabble in some other sports from time to time. College basketball, NHL. Heck, I've even looked at monkey knife fight before. So if you're into that sort of thing, daily fantasy sports, prop betting and things like that, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, as I usually drop videos on a daily basis and I wouldn't want you to miss any of my awesome content. Also, hitting that like button lets me know that you like what I'm doing in today's video and you want to see more of it. Definitely do that for me. I do appreciate it. We are well over 720 subscribers, 730 subscribers now, I think. So I appreciate your support. It's been tremendous and the outpouring has been truly, truly humbling. Now, without further ado, we've got a pretty big NBA slate. Obviously, yesterday, a ton of trades, a lot went down. A lot of these teams have been shaken up, including my Orlando Magic, trading away our three best players, looking to finally do a full rebuild for the first time in a number of years. So I'm excited about the future. But with that being said, there's a lot of movement and a lot of things that have been shaken up, and it will impact tonight's NBA slate to some degree. So let's start talking here, because I'm going to do 3 picks for points, 3 picks for assists, 3 for rebounds, and 3 picks for three-pointers made. So, like I said, we got a 12-pack of picks for you today, and we'll see if going over or under makes some sense on some of these guys. Now, the first one I have on the list here is going to be Ricky Rubio, point guard for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I have him going over 10.5 real life points. So let's go down to Ricky Rubio. He's at 10.5 on PrizePicks, and we can start breaking him down and seeing if that 10.5 is a number he can go over tonight versus the Houston Rockets, or if he'll be falling short, and maybe the under is the way to go on Rubio. So first things first, we scroll down and we could take a look here on Fantasy Labs. This is obviously a totally free tool. You can go on to fantasylabs.com/NBA/Vegas, and it'll show you all the lines, how the movement has been throughout the day and stuff like that. So in this one, we get an idea of the game totals and the spread here. Obviously, you see Minnesota, the home team, 115.5 points is what they opened at. Now, they are now up to 117, meaning that they're expected to score 1.5 more points than they were originally. So more points on the Minnesota side. And then you can see Houston 112. They're now up to 112.5. So they've went up a half a point as well. So pretty good game totals here. We're looking at almost 230 combined points, which is a lovely thing for me. The more points on the board, the better, and it makes me more willing to take overs, whether it be like Ricky Rubio in these real life points or rebounds, assists, you name it. Everything goes up when the game totals go up. So there you have it. Now, we're going to start looking at the first thing here. So 10.5 points. I go over to lineups.com, and I like lineups.com because it allows you to look for stats and get averages for season averages, 30-game averages, 10-game averages. So I like to start there and see how Ricky Rubio has been performing in each of those categories. So if we scroll down, click Minnesota, and it's already on season average for us, which is very, very helpful. We can go ahead and move down to Ricky Rubio's name, and you can see for the season, he's only scoring 8.6 points. So my initial hunch of maybe going over on Ricky Rubio doesn't look good so far. It looks like an under, but let's change this from season average to 30-game average. And you see that his scoring average starts to rise. It starts to come up a little bit. It's now at 9.7 for his last 30 games. Now, finally, I like to look at the last 10 games and see how he's been scoring the basketball. And again, it takes another significant leap. So his scoring average is actually going up. So taking the over in his last 10 games on this 10.5 point prop is the way to go here from the looks of things. But I don't stop there. No sirree, Bob. So we go over to Ricky Rubio and search for him on Basketball Reference, and we can take a look at Rubio and get an idea of his most recent game logs and how he's been scoring. Again, basketball-reference.com. Totally free to use this. You can go and find it yourself and do all of the things that I'm showing you here from the comfort of your own home. So we scroll over and down to his very most recent game logs and try to get an idea of how he's been doing in his last few. So you can see against the Dallas Mavericks, he scores just 3 points, which is a little worrisome. But then you go back a little further here, 11, 21, 2 games where he goes over. And then at 6 points, that puts him under. And then finally, his 5th game back, 19 points. So in his last 5 games, he has went over tonight's 10.5 points in 3 out of 5. So not a bad success rate there. Now, one other thing that we can do is go back here and look for any previous matchups against this Houston Rockets team. And I'm going all the way back to the beginning here. And unless I'm blind and I missed it, well, I don't see any previous matchup against the Rockets. But I can tell you that so far, I do like the totals. And I do like the spread. It looks like it's going to be high scoring and a competitive game. Not one that we're really worried about blowing out. So guys like Ricky Rubio, who get pretty good minutes here over the last few games, you could see his minutes are 30, 33, 33, 29, 27. So he's getting around 30 or more minutes on average. So guys like that should play a lot of minutes in this particular matchup. Now, one last thing that I like to do is go to rotowire.com. Now, you go to rotowire.com/NBA/player-props. You can see that there's this little handy dandy toolbar along the bottom here that has points, rebounds, assists, 3-pointers, and other stats. But for PrizePicks, we're just worried about points, rebounds, assists, and 3-pointers today. So we're going to click points, and it's going to take us right here. We get a little handy dandy little search bar here, and we can search for Ricky Rubio and see how people are placing their bets on various sports books, which is also very helpful when making decisions on player props like this one. So Ricky Rubio on DraftKings Sportsbook is at 11.5. Now at 11.5, people are taking the under, which means simply that he won't score more than 11.5, or that's what they believe will happen. So that means he's going to score at least 11, but maybe even less than that, based on the way that they're betting. So 11 points would be good enough for us to win money here if we're trying to take the over on Ricky Rubio. So I'm fine with him going under 11.5. I just need him to score 11, and I'm fine. So BetMGM is the next site. You can see they've got him at 11.5, a whole point higher than PrizePicks. People, again, are betting the under on 11.5, which, again, is fine. If he lands on 11, I'm A-okay with 11. And then finally, PointsBet, 11.5. People are taking the under more than the over here. So again, they don't think that he's going to score 12 points. They think he'll probably land on 11, and 11 is A-okay by me. I'm going to take the over on Ricky Rubio, and I think maybe you should give it some consideration as well. Hard for me to say. All right, so with that one in the books, we can move to our next guy, which is going to be Karl Anthony Towns, the teammate of Ricky Rubio. And I like Karl Anthony Towns going over 25.5 points for this matchup against the Houston Rockets. Of course, the Rockets, they don't really have a formidable big man, somebody that can really stop Karl Anthony Towns. Their best big guy, Christian Wood. Christian Wood, I don't think he quite matches up well with Karl Anthony Towns. Towns a little taller, a little bigger, a little stronger. I do like this matchup here for Karl Anthony Towns. So we will rinse and repeat. Of course, we've already talked about the totals and the spread in this game. We're not worried about this game blowing out. Spread is looking at 4.5 points. So I give it a green, maybe a little hint of yellow in terms of blowout risk or blowout potential here. But so far, so good. I'm not worried about fading this game at all. So we'll head back over to lineups.com. Now, luckily for us, both Towns and Rubio play for the Minnesota Timberwolves, so we already have that preloaded here for you. We could look at his season averages. Now, for the season, he's scoring 23.5 points, which puts him under 25.5. So that's not a good sign. So we'll have to go to the 30-game averages and look at those. Well, they drop. They drop down to 19.9. So his averages are trending in the wrong direction from season to 30-game averages. Finally, we'll look at his last 10 games, and you can see that his points are down to 17.4, but his minutes are also down. So 17.4 would put him well under 25.5. So far, my over on Karl Anthony Towns 25.5 is not looking too great, but we need to take a look at his last few games here and get a better idea. Maybe the season averages, 30-game averages, and 10-game averages aren't good sample sizes. Maybe we got to go a little further here. So we will. We'll go to game logs. We'll look at his game logs for this season and his last 5 in particular. Now, his minutes have been good. 33, 38, 35, 35, 35. So in his last 5 games, he's getting plenty of minutes. Now, his points. 22 puts him under 25.5. 33 puts him over. 24 puts him under. 41 puts him well over. And 29, finally, that would put him over. So in his last 5 games, he's got 1, 2, 3 games where he goes over 25.5 and 2 games where he goes under. Now, I think I already looked at previous matchups between Minnesota and Houston. I'm going to look again here, but I did not see any previous matchups, and I still don't. So we don't really have anything to go off of for this season in terms of how Karl Anthony Towns performs against this Rockets team, but just trust me, this is a matchup that I think he can win against Christian Wood. Now, finally, we're going to take one last look here at rotowire.com and take a look at the various sports books and see how people are betting on Karl Anthony Towns and his prop of 25.5. We could see on DraftKings Sportsbook, people are torn. 113 under, 113 over. So not seeing anything strong one way or the other. Now, BetMGM, they've got him at 25.5 as well. They are betting the over more than they're betting the under. So the 25.5 looking like the way to go, according to the folks who bet over on BetMGM. And then finally, PointsBet, 25.5. Again, kind of split, kind of torn, not really seeing a strong direction one way or the other. But, given the totals of this game, given the matchup, I do think Karl Anthony Towns at 25.5 might just be a little bit too low. We've already seen in his last 5 games that he's got scoring upside up into like 40 real-life points in some cases. So I'm probably leaning toward the over on Karl Anthony Towns, and we'll see how it goes. Now, the last guy in terms of points that we're going to look at is Jalen Brown from the Boston Celtics. Jalen Brown, he is projected for 23 points over on PrizePicks. So at that 23, we're going to see if he can go over. I like the over on Jalen Brown at 23. So first things first, let's look at this game total and the spread here. Of course, Boston, they made a pretty big couple of moves yesterday. They moved Daniel Theis. So Daniel Theis no longer with the Boston Celtics, and they acquired my guy, well, formerly Evan Fournier. So they added some more scoring punch to their team. So some good moves there for Boston as they look to make a playoff push here. Now, in this matchup, you've got right now the implied live totals. Milwaukee Bucks, 120.5. The Boston Celtics, 114.5. So you're looking at a 6-point spread at the moment. Now, I can't give this a green in terms of spread. I got to put this one probably in the yellow with a little hint of orange in terms of blowout potential. I hope it doesn't blow out. I hope things stay close and competitive because I'm looking to go over on Jalen Brown on this 23-point prop. So with that in mind, we will head back over to lineups.com. We will find the Boston Celtics team. We will change it to the season averages and start there. And you can see for the season, 24.7 points per game for Jalen Brown. That puts him over 23 by quite a comfortable margin there. So I'm liking the way the overs stacking up so far. Now, if we switch things over to the 30-game average, 24.3, still more than a point over 23. So I'm still liking it there. And then finally, in his last 10 games, it drops a little bit, 23.6, but still 0.6 over 23. So I'm liking the over so far and how it's shaping up. Now we're going to head back over to basketballreference.com. We're going to type in Jalen Brown's name. There's lots of Browns that have played in the NBA over the years, but we found the guy that we're after. And you can see here that we scroll on down to the very bottom so we can get to his most recent game logs. Now recently, in his last handful of games, last 5, he's played 33 minutes, 40, 32, 34, and 39. So getting pretty good run here for this Boston Celtics squad. Now, we got to look at the scoring and see how he's been doing. His last game was against this Milwaukee Bucks team. He drops 24 real-life points on them. That would be good for the over. 27 over, 34 over, 19 puts him under, and then finally 28 against Cleveland, putting him over. So the over on 23 points has been the way to go. He's converted on that in 4 out of his last 5 games. Now, I'll take it a step further here, and we'll go back in time and see if he's got any other matchups against this Milwaukee Bucks team. And he does, but it's the very first game of the season back on December 23rd against Milwaukee. Now, in that game, he played 37 minutes, ended up with 33 real-life points. So that's another over in the game log for Jalen Brown in this 23-point prop. The last thing we'll do here is go over to RotoWire, type in Mr. Brown's name, and you can see that on DraftKings Sportsbook, they've got him at 23.5. No real strong juice one way or the other on the under or on the over. But on FanDuel, people are betting the under at 23.5, which puts him at 23 or less points. If it lands on 23, well, that's a push. And we still get paid on pushes, but we do want to try and get over 23 points. Now, BetMGM, they got him at 23.5 as well. People are taking the under, which would put him on 23. And then PointsBet, they've got him at 23.5, and people are taking the under there. So the under is the way that the betting sites, the various sports books, are going on Jalen Brown at the moment. I do think that with the game totals being pretty high, with the spread being competitive enough to where I think this game stays close for 4 quarters, that Jalen Brown could be in a good spot here to go over his 23-point prop. So that's going to do it for the scoring props, the points props. Next up, we're going to look at some assists, where I've got 3 names for you that we're going to look at there. And the first one we're going to start with is this guy right here, Fred VanVleet. I like Fred VanVleet to potentially hit the over on 5 assists against this Phoenix Suns team. Now, the Raptors were busy yesterday. They shipped out Norman Powell, and in return got Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood, I believe, as well. So they sent one guy out. They get 2 guys in return. So not a bad deal there for the Toronto Raptors. And they did keep Kyle Lowry around, surprisingly. A lot of people thought Lowry was going to be moved to maybe Philadelphia, maybe Miami, but no, he's staying put, at least for the rest of this season. And we got Fred VanVleet here tonight at 5 assists. So let's take a look at how this game total looks for this Raptors-Suns game, and then we'll go from there. So we look at the implied live totals. You got Phoenix at 114.25, Toronto at 110.25. So you're looking at a spread of 4 points. Totals aren't terrible here. That's a pretty good amount of points being scored by both teams, and I'm not really worried about a blowout. Looks like these teams are going to, stay neck and neck for the most part here. So I don't expect a blowout, and neither does Vegas. All right, so with that in mind, Fred VanVleet at 5 assists, we can start by looking at lineups.com. I'll change this back to season averages. I'll remove the Boston Celtics and go find the Toronto Raptors here. Okay, and so you can see for the season, VanVleet, 6.4 assists. 6.4 assists puts him over 5 by a lot. In his last 5 games, 6.5 assists. So it goes up by 0.10 of a percentage point there. So that's trending in the right direction for us. Now, in his last 10 games, he hasn't been dishing the ball at as high of a clip as he has for his 30-game averages and his season game averages. But 5.5 assists is still more than 5. So if we're looking to take the over on Fred VanVleet, I think so far, so good. We'll head back to Basketball Reference and we'll take a look a little bit at Fred VanVleet's last few games and see how he's been doing. Of course, he missed a lot of time for this Toronto Raptors team, but he's been back, and we should have enough of a game sample here in his last few to get a good read on how VanVleet's been playing. Now, the first thing I want to look at is the minutes. So his minutes in his last game, 30. But then in the 3 previous, 40, 41, 40, and then finally his first game back after missing about 5 games, he played 32. So you got 32, 40, 41, 40, and 30. So playing some pretty big minutes here, 30 or more in 2 games and 40 or more in 3 out of his last 5 games. But the thing we're most concerned about is his assists. Now, if we look at his assists, 2 assists puts him under, 2 puts him under, 7, 9, over, and then finally against Detroit in that first game back, 4 assists there would put him under. So, yeah, the over's not looking too great in his last 5 games. He's got a couple of big games in there. mainly against Utah and against Cleveland, where he went over the 5 assists. Let's see if he's got any previous game logs here against this Phoenix Suns team and how he performed in those matchups. I do see at least one. Now, this was back on January 6th of this year. And in that game, he drops 7 dimes for the Toronto Raptors. So that's looking pretty good there in terms of the over. Now, I don't think I had any other game logs to compare to. So, yeah, just to wrap things up here, his recent game logs, just 2 overs, 5 unders, but a previous matchup against this Phoenix team, he did go over, dropping 7 assists in that one. So it's going to be a little shaky here. And the reason I say that is because you've taken a big piece out of this Toronto Raptors squad, Norman Powell, and we don't get to see Gary Trent Jr. or Rodney Hood yet for the Toronto Raptors. I don't think they're playing tonight. So this might be one that's just better to avoid until you kind of see how the usage and everything shakes out. But if you had a gun to my head, one way or the other, I'd probably lean toward the over, but I'm not feeling super confident on Fred VanVleet here. So overall, probably just a fade for me. The next guy we have is Nikola Jokic, the big man for the Denver Nuggets. And of course, the Denver Nuggets yesterday making a big move. They ship out both Gary Harris and RJ Hampton to the Orlando Magic, my favorite team. And in exchange, they get Aaron Gordon, a very good two-way player, versatile player to help bolster that team. So very good trade for the Denver Nuggets. And I actually don't mind the trade for my Orlando Magic either. We get a draft pick in that deal as well. So I think it was a pretty evenly balanced trade for both teams. Now, Nikola Jokic at 9 assists tonight, facing the New Orleans Pelicans. That game tips off at 8:10 p.m. Let's take a look and see how Mr. Jokic has been doing. I'm taking the under on this 9 assists. I don't know if he gets there. So we're going to research this a little bit and see if over or under is the way to go. So we go down and we find the Denver Nuggets game, and I'm not seeing it. Did I skip it? Yep, I skipped it. Okay, so the implied live totals, we got Denver at 117.25. New Orleans 114.75. So you're talking about a spread of about 2.5 points. Loving the game totals here. Tons of points to be scored, and I'm loving the spread as well. Should stay close, should stay competitive. Not worried about a blowout. This gets a green light go from me. All right, so we'll head on over to lineups. We'll change it back to season averages. We will go and uncheck the Toronto Raptors. And in their place, we will check off the Denver Nuggets. Cool. And for the season, you could see that Nikola Jokic is averaging 8.5 assists, which puts him under 9 assists. So far, so good in terms of season average. Now, if we look at the 30-game averages, his assists drop way down to 7.9 assists, putting him well under, over an assist under per game versus tonight's pick of 9 assists. And then finally, in his last 10 games, his assists are at 8.6, still putting him under 9. So the under looking like the way to go for all 3 averages that we looked at on lineups.com. Now, we've looked at his last 10 games. We're going to look at his last 5 games and try to find some previous matchups to get a better read on this assist prop of 9 tonight for Joker. Now, in his last few games here against the, last 5 games rather, we'll get to the previous matchup in just a moment. In his last 5 games, he's got 5 assists, putting him under 9. Then he goes 10-10, putting him over, 9, putting him at a push, and then 10, putting him over the 9 assists. So in his last 5 games, he's got 3 overs, 1 under, and 1 push. It's been a mixed bag here. Now, what I can tell you is this, that in this previous game against the New Orleans Pelicans, which was just back 5 days ago, he puts up 10 assists to go along with 10 rebounds and 29 points. A big-time triple-double for Jokic in that one. We're going to go back and see if there's any other game logs here against this New Orleans Pelicans team. Scrolling, and I don't see any others. So he has just 1 game log, and in that game, he did go over 9 assists, but I'm leaning toward the under in this one so far. Now, finally, clear out Jalen Brown's name. We'll click the little assist button down here at the bottom, and the first guy that pops up is Nikola Jokic, so we don't have to do much searching here. So Denver at New Orleans, you could see DraftKings Sportsbook has him up at 9.5 assists. People are betting the under, meaning they think he's going to dish out 9 assists or fewer. So if he lands on 9, that's a push. That, of course, still pays out, but not quite as good as if he does indeed go under 9 assists. Now, FanDuel, people are taking the under on 9.5. BetMGM at 8.5. People are taking the over quite strongly. And finally, PointsBet has him at 9.5, and people are taking the under there as well. So I'm leaning on the under for Nikola Jokic, but worst case scenario, hoping for a push here. And I think you should give that one a little consideration as well. Now, finally, the last guy we're going to talk about in terms of assists is going to be John Wall. Houston Rockets point guard. They're facing the Minnesota Timberwolves. We've talked a little bit about this game already. Let's talk about it a little bit more here. So Houston, we've already said their total's 112.5, decent amount of points. The spread, 4.5. Not a blowout, but one that, could get out of hand later on in the game. Houston's been kind of bad, but they're starting to kind of finally come around and get healthy and everything. So here we go. Let's look at John Wall and this 7 assist prop. Head back to lineups. We'll switch it to season view. Go down here and find us some Houston Rockets. All right, I'm going to actually sort this by assist so we can get John Wall up here a little higher. Now, for the season, he's dished out 6.3 assists, which puts him under 7. For his last 30 games, 6.3 assists. And finally, his last 10 games, 6.3 assists. So his assists, pretty steady across the board here. So let's take it a step further and let's look at John Wall and his last 5 games and see how that 7 assist number has done for him. All right, moving on down the list here, you can see we don't really have like 5 recent games for him, so we might go back a little further here just to get a better read on this. But in his last 4 games, we can at least look at those. 7 assists, then he drops 10 assists, 7 assists, 7 assists. So in his last 4 games, we'll look at those and just stick to those. He's got 7 in 3 out of the 4 games, which is good for a push. He's also got 10 in one of those games, which is good for the over. Now, let's see if we got a recent matchup here or a previous matchup against this Minnesota Timberwolves team. I am not seeing one. I don't see a game against Minnesota. So, yeah, this is the first time that these two teams have met. But overall, guys, he has not dropped under 7 in assists in his last 4 games. So you can expect maybe 7 or more, which is why I'm leaning toward the over. And with the game totals being what they are and the spread being what it is, I think he gets there. Now, the final step, of course, is going over to rotowire.com and seeing if we've got a assist prop up for John Wall on any of these sports books. DraftKings doesn't have them up. FanDuel doesn't have them up. But thankfully, BetMGM and PointsBet do. So at BetMGM, he's at 7.5, slightly higher than he is on PrizePicks. At 7.5, people are still taking the over at 7.5. Now, on PointsBet, it's a little bit of a contrast here. They've got him at 7.5, but people are taking the under on 7.5. So you kind of got a mixed situation here. Some are saying 7 or more. Some are saying under 7.5. So I'm going to stick at the over on 7. And again, I'm hoping that he goes over, but if he doesn't, I still think a push is definitely in play for John Wall. So that's going to do it for the assist prop. Now, the next one we've got here is rebounds. And I've got 3 guys we're going to talk rebounds about. Starting with the first one, which is Mr. Jalen Brown for the Boston Celtics. They've got him at 6 rebounds over on PrizePicks at the moment. I'm liking the over on 6 rebounds. We've already talked this game total being pretty high. Spread being competitive and close enough for the most part. So we're just going to jump right into lineups.com and look at Jalen Brown and see how he's been performing in the rebound category for the season for 30 games and 10 games. So 5.7 rebounds per game for the season, putting him under 6. In his last 30 games, Jalen Brown, 5.6 rebounds per game. Not good enough for the over. So far my over's not looking very good compared to these averages. Now, good news for me, in his last 10 games, he is over 6 rebounds, putting him at 6.1. So the over has been good to Jalen Brown here in his last 10 games. But we're going to take it a step further, like we always do, and look at his last 5 and any previous matchups against this Milwaukee Bucks team. So if we head on down here to the bottom of the list, you can look at the rebound column, total rebounds, TRB. His last game, 10 rebounds, well over 6 in that one. No problem there. Against Memphis, 9 rebounds, putting him over. 4 puts him under. 11 putting him over by far on 6. Then he has a 3, and that puts him under. So in his last 5 games, he's got 1, 2 unders versus 3 overs. So the overs have been kind to Jalen Brown in terms of how he's been rebounding the basketball. Now, we're going to go back and we're going to find a previous game log against Milwaukee. You could see he pulled 10 boards in his last game. That was against this same Milwaukee Bucks team. If we go all the way back here to the first game of the season, total rebounds, 5. So he does fall short in that one, which doesn't help us make a good case for the over on Jalen Brown, but overall, he has been rebounding the basketball a lot better lately. So we're back to RotoWire. We clicked the rebound button down at the bottom. We're going to look at the different sports books. DraftKings doesn't have a rebound prop up for Brown, but FanDuel, BetMGM, and PointsBet all do. So at 6.5 on FanDuel, people are taking the under, which puts them right on 6, which would lead us to believe that maybe a push is in play tonight. And again, pushes pay, but we would like him to go over in this case. BetMGM at 6.5, they're taking the under quite heavily. And then finally, PointsBet at 150 on the under. So everyone across the industry thinks that he's going to go under 6.5 rebounds. It's looking like a push in this situation, but I would lean toward the over on Jalen Brown, hoping that 1 extra rebound goes his way. His rebounding numbers have been up over his last 5 games, and including the last game against Milwaukee, where he crushed the boards with 10 rebounds. So liking that one there for Jalen Brown. The next guy we're going to talk about in terms of rebounds is Ricky Rubio. Now, we've already talked Ricky Rubio points. We're going to talk Ricky Rubio rebounds now. That's RRR, Ricky Rubio rebounds, triple R. 3.5 is his prop today. We've already mentioned that this game, pretty good totals on both sides. The spread competitive enough at 4.5, although that spread has grown a little bit throughout the day. It was 3.5, now it's 4.5, which means that maybe a blowout is even more in play than it was earlier in the day. But we're going to do the same thing that we do for all these other guys and all these other props, and we're going to scroll on down here on lineups.com, switch things over to the season view, and you can see for the season, 3.1 boards, putting him under tonight's prop of 3.5. Over his last 30 games, 3.2, creeps up a little bit, and then finally in his last 10 games, 3.1. So nothing indicating that 3.5 rebounds going over that number makes any sense right now. So let's look at his last 5 games, and maybe that will tell a different tale here in terms of Rubio and his ability to rebound the basketball. So we'll scroll on down here and look at his total rebounds for his last 5 games. Now, in his last 5, he's got an under, an over, an over, an under, and an under. So he's only went over 3.5 rebounds in his last 5 games twice, with 3 unders. Now, in this matchup here against Houston, I think we've talked about it before. There is no previous matchup for us to compare to, so there ain't no telling what's going to happen here tonight. This is the first time we're going to see Rubio and this Houston Rockets team face off here. So finally, let's cap it off and do what we do by going over to RotoWire, where we could look at the 3.5 rebound prop on DraftKings Sportsbook. As you can see, no real action one way or the other. Over on BetMGM, people are taking the under on 3.5. And then finally, PointsBet, people are taking the under on 3.5. So I'm not feeling good about my initial hunch of taking the over on Ricky Rubio at 3.5 rebounds. I got to keep it a buck with you. I got to keep it real with you. So I'm probably fading this and not playing Ricky Rubio. You see that? I'm making a crossing motion over his square on PrizePicks. Probably fading this one. This one's not looking as good as his points prop from earlier. So the final guy we're going to look at in terms of rebounds, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Milwaukee Bucks. I'm leaning right now, before any research, at 11.5 rebounds. I'm leaning on the under for Giannis Antetokounmpo. So that could work. It could not work. We'll find out. We're going to look into it a little further. That's what we do here. Now, Milwaukee Bucks, 120.5 points. Yes, the spread's at 6. It's a little worrisome. Could get out of hand here, but we're going to roll with it. And this is part of the reason why we're going to take the under on Giannis Antetokounmpo in case this game does get out of hand, right? Then it'll be hard for him to hit 12 or more rebounds. So let's head over here to lineups. We'll unclick Minnesota. We will click Milwaukee, and we'll start taking a look at Giannis Antetokounmpo and these rebounding numbers. Now, for his season average, 11.6, that puts him just a hair, just a smidge, a sprinkle over 11.5. For his last 30 games, though, goes up 12.1 rebounds, putting him well over 11.5, a more healthy over there. But his last 10 games, the rebounds have come down to just 11 rebounds per game, putting him under. And that's what we tend to probably favor a little bit more, is like, how is he doing lately? That's what we want to know. And we can get an even better read by looking at the game logs. And we'll do just that here on Basketball Reference. Let's get our scroll on. We'll head on down to the bottom of the line here to his previous matchup against Boston. This is the last game he played. 8 rebounds, well under 11.5. He misses this game here. 9 rebounds puts him under. Now, he goes on a tear in this 3-game stretch. 11 rebounds, 15 rebounds, 15 rebounds. The 11, not good enough for the over. So all in all, his last 5 games, he's got 3 unders with 2 overs. So I am leaning toward the under even more based on that 5-game sample we looked at. Now, finally, we wouldn't do ourselves any justice here if we did not look at the various sports books and see how things are stacking up for Giannis on this rebound prop. DraftKings, 11.5. Not seeing any real juice over or under. FanDuel, 11.5. Same thing. BetMGM, people are actually taking a slight over here at the 11.5. Excuse me. And then PointsBet, no action one way or the other. So 3 out of the 4 sports books, we're not really seeing any clear indication of if people are putting their money on the under or the over. But we do have BetMGM here where someone or a few someones have taken the over on 11.5. So make of that what you will. Now, our last stat here is going to be 3-point. I appreciate you guys hanging in. So we're going to buzz through these 3 shooters and see if going over or under on this little prop here for their 3-pointers makes any sense. The first guy we're going to talk about is Ja Morant. So let's go find him. All right, Ja Morant taking on the Utah Jazz tonight. The Utah Jazz Memphis Grizzlies game tips off at 9:10 p.m. So we got Ja Morant at 0.5 3-pointers made. Now, I am leaning on taking the over on that 0.5 3-pointers made, which means Ja's just got to knock 1 down. Sounds easy for a point guard, right? Well, let's see if that makes any sense at all here. With the way that this game's shaping up. The first thing we're going to look at is the game totals and spread. Now, the totals on the Memphis side of things, 109.5, not looking very sexy here. Utah, 119. Now, the live spread on this game is 9.5 points, which means that a blowout is definitely in play and on the table and very likely to happen here. They favor Utah to smoke this Memphis Grizzlies team. So if this game does get out of hand, it's going to be hard for Ja Morant to attempt shots when he's over there on the sideline in the 4th quarter, sitting his butt on the bench. So that's a little worrisome. Got to be real. But with that in mind, we could go ahead and take a look at Ja Morant and how he has been performing from the 3-point line. Yes, lineups.com does help with that as well. And I will show you how here in just a minute. So we've got the season averages loaded. We've got the Memphis Grizzlies loaded here. You can see that for the season, he's taking about 4 3-pointers per game. Now, on that 4 3-point attempt number, he's hitting about 0.8. So not even one three-pointer made per game. But 0.8 is higher than 0.5, which would mean that we would probably lean toward taking the over in this situation. Now that's just for the season average. Let's see if these numbers change for him at all. He's attempting less three-pointers over his last 30 games versus the season averages down to 3.6, but his makes still at 0.8. So actually that means he is becoming a little bit more efficient in his last 30 games at making threes, attempting less, but the makes are staying the same. Now finally, in his last 10, his attempts are up to 4.1 per game. So he's shooting it over 4 times per game from beyond the arc, and his makes are actually up to 0.9. He's almost up to making 1 per game. So you can see why I'm liking the over on this 0.5 prop here. There's some legitimacy here. Now let's look at his last 5 games and see how he's been shooting the rock here. Ja Morant, Basketball Reference, and there's something else that we can look at here too, and I will put that up in another tab, and we'll look at his game logs for the last few. All right, so you could see in his last game, which was against the Oklahoma City Thunder, he took 4 threes, knocked down 1. Game against Boston, took 5, knocked down 1. In his game against Golden State, took 5, knocked down 1. All right, 3 in a row where he's went over 0.5. I'm liking it. Now, in his 4th and 5th games, attempts 2, doesn't make any. Attempts 5 against Miami, doesn't make any there either. So overall, his last 5 games, he's got 3 games where he's hit at least 1 3, which is all we need him to do. So 3 overs and 2 unders. Now, against Utah, let's see if we've got a previous game log here and see how he maybe shot the ball or didn't shoot the ball so well. And, I'm not seeing one here, guys. So no previous game logs against Utah. This will be the first time that he faces off against the Jazz. I'm liking it. Let's do it. Let's take Ja Morant over 0.5. Now, the final thing that we'll look at here is his shooting metrics. What's going on here? Shots? Is this what I want to look at? Interesting. This is not exactly what I wanted to see. Let me see if I can find it. Bear with me. Let's go here. Okay. This might be what I'm looking at or looking for. Maybe it'll let us filter it by the type of shot. No, I'm not seeing what I'm looking for. 3-point field goals. 0.8. We've already looked at all that. 22.9%. Ooh, yuck. I don't know. Never mind. Sorry for wasting your time and mine. That's not what I was looking for, and I can't find what I'm looking for at the moment. So we'll move on, and we'll just look at his 3-point props here on the various sports books. Sorry about that, everybody at home. Now, on DraftKings, they got him at 0.5. It's pretty split here. Not seeing a strong over or under either way. FanDuel at 0.5, people are taking the over. So they agree. They're in alignment, in agreement with me and my over on this 0.5. BetMGM 0.5, they are taking the over there. And finally, PointsBet at 0.5, people are taking the over as well. So Ja Morant over. Let's do it. Let's do some Ja Morant over on this 0.5 3-pointers made. I like it. The next dude we're going to look at is Brandon Ingram, New Orleans Pelicans. Three 3-pointers made. Now on that 3, I'm leaning toward the under. And this is without any research, without any looking into it. We're going to do that right here, right now. So let's do it. We're heading back on over here to Fantasy Labs, and we're going to take a look at this game total and the spread. Now, right now, this total's looking pretty good for both teams. 117.25 for Denver, 114.75 for New Orleans. Just a 2.5-point spread. Plenty of points being scored. Spread's competitive. I like that. Let's head over to lineups. Now, for this particular search, I don't think the New Orleans Pelicans come up as a team, so we might have to do a search for Brandon Ingram. There we go. Manual search here. Sometimes you got to go in and just get your hands dirty. So for the season, he's attempting 6 3-pointers a game, making 2.4, which puts him under tonight's prop of 3. So far the under looking good. Let's move this to last 30 games here. Brandon I for Ingram. And there you go. He's attempting 6.5 3-pointers in his last 30, making just 2.5. So still under 3, looking like the way to go. Now let's look at his last 10 games. 5.7 3-pointers attempted, and his makes 2.2, still under 3. So man, we're looking pretty good here so far. I gotta say, I'm liking the under on Brandon Ingram in this 3. Let's look at his recent games and see how he's been shooting it in his last 5. So we'll head on down the line here. We'll look at his last 5. He's attempted 6 in this game here against the Lakers, and he makes 4. Ooh, that would be bad if we took the under there. 7, but only makes 2. 9, but makes just 3, which is good for a push. 9 and makes 3, which is good for a push, and 6 and makes 3, which is good for a push. So let me wrap it up for you and put a bow on it. He's got 1 over, 1 under, and 3 games where he is pushed on this 3 fantasy, 3-pointers made fantasy prop. So yeah, I'm leaning toward the under here. Worst case, it's a push, and we still make some money no matter what. So last but not least, let's go over to RotoWire and take a look at Brandon Ingram and see how they've got him on the various sports books. And so far, DraftKings Sportsbooks at 2.5, people are taking the over. So they think he's going to make at least 3, which lines up for a push. Now, FanDuel, they've got him at 2.5 as well. People are strongly taking the over there, which would land on 3. And finally, PointsBet at 2.5, people are taking the over there as well. So they're, looking like a push here. It's looking like a push. Let's be real. But, I'm going to lean toward the under based on the other numbers that I'm seeing here. And, God, worst case scenario, he pushes and he hits exactly 3 3-pointers. Not the end of the world in that case. So the last guy, Fred VanVleet, and then we're going to wrap up this video. Fred VanVleet, we've already talked about him earlier for his assists. Well, we're going to talk about him again. And his 3-pointers are at 3 today. I am thinking that maybe going over on Fred VanVleet without Norman Powell around anymore, without the new guys in the lineup, maybe the over on Fred VanVleet at 3 3-pointers is the way to go. So let's see if that's true, false, somewhere in between maybe. Toronto Raptors, 110.25, Phoenix 114.25. So we talked about this earlier, 4-point spread. Let's look at the totals here for the averages for the season, 30 games and 10 games for Fred VanVleet. All right, clearing all that out, resetting everything, and we could see that for the season, he is taking 9 3-pointers per game. Huge number there. And on those 9 attempts, 3.4 makes, putting him over. So far, I am loving it. When he's shooting the ball that much, whew, how can you not take the over? Now, in his last 30 games, his attempts are down to 8.8, but his makes 3.3. Still over 3. Still looking good for the over. And then finally, for his last 10 games, 9.6 threes attempted. Shoo! 3.6 threes made. Yes, sir. Sounds like money to me. Ka-ching, ka-ching. And the last thing we're going to look at is how he's been shooting it in his last 5 games or last few games since returning from that long layoff. All right, we head on down the line here. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games since he has returned to this Raptors roster. So in those 5 games, he had 9 attempts in his last one, makes 5. That's good for an over. 11, and he makes 4. That's good for an over. 15, and he makes 5. That's good for an over. 8, and he only makes 2. Now that's just an under there. And 7, and he only makes 1 there. But he played less minutes in this game, just 32 minutes. He was coming off of a 5-game absence, so some rust possibly, some conditioning, some cardio. Got to knock those things off. And same thing in this game, still probably working his way back, finding his rhythm, finding his legs. But man, his last 3 are looking mighty good. I don't think 3 3-pointers is quite high enough for Fred VanVleet right now. So after I'm done with this video, I'm sneaking off and I'm going to go hit the over on Fred VanVleet unless RotoWire says differently. Let's take a look and see how people are putting their money down on this 3-point prop for Fred VanVleet. Now over on DraftKings Sportsbook, he's at 2.5. On 2.5, people are hammering the over. Yes, love it. Over on FanDuel, people are hammering the over. BetMGM 2.5, hammering the over. PointsBet 2.5, hammering the over on 2.5. So strong possibility that we're looking at a push or better. I'm leaning toward the or better here. Fred VanVleet, lock. Like I don't say lock a lot, but this is looking like a lock for some money. You might push, but I think you go over. I like this play a lot out of the ones that we've mentioned, but you guys tell me what you think. What picks out of this 12 pack of picks for player props are you liking tonight over on the NBA slate? Drop a comment down below. Let me know if there's somebody that I mentioned that maybe you're liking or somebody that I didn't mention that you're really liking. I love to hear your feedback. Smash the like button if you enjoyed today's video and it brought you any value whatsoever. For Out of Bounds DFS, my name is CJ and I'm out of here. I got to go lock some lineups in, guys. Good luck tonight. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace.